Hi everyone, my name is Sam Mootoo, and this is my final presentation for Business Intelligence with Visual Analytics, our Tableau summer class. I'll be presenting musings on Michelin Star restaurants around the globe based on a data set that I was able to come across on Kaggle.com. Yeah, the Michelin Star system is fantastic, and it's a worthwhile, interesting dive into a little bit of this and a little bit of that on restaurants around the world. So, thanks for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. Our journey with Michelin begins in 1900 with the brothers Edouard and Andre Michelin, yes, the Michelin tire guys, publishing a guide for French motorists in the French countryside that was replete with useful information ranging from motors to meals to car mechanics. Fast forward to 1931, with many, many steps in between, they established the star rating, 0 through 3, which underwent some plastic surgery. By the time 1936 came around, they just trimmed it to 1 to 3 stars, and they established criteria for each of those stars. And then fast forward big time through World War II, the Cold War, Vietnam, many of the wars that impacted the global restaurant scene into the present tense, where now things are a little bit more stable on the surface. And we have over 14 worldwide editions covering 23 countries containing the Michelin star rated restaurants. Now, what do the stars mean exactly? One star denotes that the restaurant is considered very good in its category, but is limited in some way. It may lack a unique element that would bring people back over and over again. Two stars means that the restaurant has excellent cuisine delivered in a unique way. It has something exceptional to offer and is worth a detour to visit while traveling. And the coveted three-star rating means that the restaurant has exceptional cuisine and is worth a special trip just to visit. This restaurant is the destination, and it serves distinct dishes that are executed to perfection. Now, why did I choose Michelin restaurants? Well, I am the head chef of an up and coming cozy restaurant nestled in scenic south side of Brooklyn. That's my apartment. The last few European trips that I've taken with my wife have included a Michelin star trip in each of them. And I've been very, very fortunate enough to eat at some of the most wonderful eateries in the entire world. And they are very near and dear to my heart. And there's an incredible artistry in the cuisine. The presentation, the story of each restaurant, the story of each chef, how many of them have had extremely trying and humbling beginnings. So it's a beautiful thing to see stories being told through food and being able to connect with people through global cuisines. All my data is sourced from Kaggle.com. Unfortunately, many of the data points that I came across did not have intel on the major European countries like France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and that's one of the pitfalls of open data sources, that data can sometimes be incomplete. And one of the best practices that I learned from this is to create and curate your own data when any of the sources are questionable. I did the best I could to add in data that I came across the web, but there is some missing data from this set that I would have liked to include, that I'd maybe hopefully include in a future hobbyist presentation of this type of data. Now, again, the Michelin system was originally based on French cuisine. But the rapid expansion, the number of styles of cuisine has spread as the system has spread globally. Now, currently, the most popular categories are contemporary and modern cuisines, and that really means that those are eclectic blends that aren't really localized to any one particular country or any one particular style. As we see in the little bubble maps here, contemporary and modern make up a big portion, as do creative, innovative. And again, these are styles that are just eclectic, and they sort of shirk the lines of traditional cuisine by blending in many, many different cultures and cuisines. French is still a huge part, as is modern British. Um, but for the most part, contemporary, modern cuisine, innovative, creative, things that blur the lines are the most popular cuisines globally in the Michelin system. The number of stars by country, I wanted to take a look at that to see which countries had the most stars. And lo and behold, the US is far and away ahead of the other countries. Again, I'm not sure what the French data would have been. I'd imagine they'd have the most, but the US is leading the UK and China. Um, and it's kind of interesting to see the breakdown. China has a higher percentage of its countries that are 3 star ratings versus the U.S. We have much more 1 star rated restaurants, as is the U.K. Countries like Brazil, they don't have a 3 star rated Michelin restaurant, nor does Thailand or Singapore and anything like that. But yeah, it's interesting to see that the U.S. is that far ahead in terms of restaurants, because our restaurant scene here is as burgeoning as it is. Looking now by city, the global dominance by the US and China, a correlation to economic centers, you can see how many of each style of restaurant we have, each star rating. It's interesting to note that San Francisco has added more 3 star restaurants than the city, and I'm curious as to whether or not that had to do with population demographic, the average household income, the tech center being in San Francisco. Noting again, the only Michelin stars that South America has are located in Brazil, in Rio, and Sao Paulo. It'll be interesting to see if Uruguay and Argentina can bridge that gap in the years to come, as I know there are plenty of interesting interesting populations down there, and quite a number of tasty cuisines. So we'll see where that can go in the years to come. Touching near and dear to my heart, the Michelin system in the city. 98 total restaurants, most of which are localized in Manhattan, as evidenced by this little map that I made. I don't live in Manhattan; I live in the south side of Brooklyn. Um, but I've been to a couple of these, a couple of the one-star rated ones, and it's incredible. It's incredible how densely packed these are in a very small geographic region. The city is a hyper concentrated smorgasbord of restaurant eating. Again, 98 total ones in this city alone. Um, Looking again, stratifying the U.S. now, looking at city data in the U.S., we see that now, despite San Francisco having more three-star restaurants, as I said before, New York City has more expensive overall restaurants, even though San Francisco is more of an expensive place to live now. You look at a place like LA, or places like LA and DC and Chicago, and they tend to have more higher priced options. There aren't too many cheaper options for Michelin star restaurants if you want to go grab a bite. So that's a little bit of a higher barrier to entry. Places like Monterey and San Diego and Costa Mesa, these are small, tight knit communities um, in California with population sizes that aren't too large, but they tend to have each of them has a expensive Michelin star rated restaurant. So it's interesting, and maybe it's like an inclusion or bag factor in those small communities. Here again, I wanted to take a look at some French inspired restaurants across Europe, um, despite Europe not being able to be featured in the dataset. And I noted that the UK, given its geographical proximity, I'm sure, to France, had the highest rated percentage and price wise and rated restaurants that were French style inspired cuisines. You take a look at the bottom left picture there. That's a picture of Spondy in Greece. That's a very famous restaurant. And it's an extremely expensive restaurant, as you'd imagine, given the beauty of Greece overlooking the Mediterranean. That's a heavily inspired, French-inspired restaurant. Ireland has a French-inspired restaurant, as does Denmark. Um, it's kind of cool to look at. Here's an interesting slide that I was really intrigued to look at. Um, Multiculturalism in dining experiences. The presence of higher-end Indian cuisine in London's busy downtown, and I found that pretty cool because of the English colonial rule over India, and now that kind of gave way eventually to Indian cuisine becoming a mainstay in Britain's downtown. I was fortunate enough to go to Veer Sami a couple of years ago with my wife. Really cool Indian spot, um, and again, it's interesting to see how featured Indian cuisine is uh, in the UK and how much of an identity the English have around Indian cuisine. It's kind of cool. It's like sort of a two-way street there. Going on that same angle, this data point here, this is a little bit of a busy slide, but what I wanted to highlight here was that the sort of diffusion of Asian cuisine. Cantonese, so both the language and the cuisine are considered less westernized, more traditional emblems of Chinese culture. And Asian cuisine in general tend to be geared toward higher quality, but less pricey options. And here, looking at some of the styles of restaurants in Asia, we see that we have a lot of different styles of Asian cuisine: Korean, innovative, sushi. There's some Thai down here, Cantonese, Chinese. So it's interesting to see how that cultural diffusion and cuisine diffusion has also spread across Asia. It's not just sort of a Europe to Asia thing; it's across Asia and within Asia itself. And that kind of wraps it up. Again, there's just a little bit of a hodgepodge, touching on some interesting data points that I was able to pull out from this data set. The Michelin star rating really created a competitive sphere in global cuisine and elevated the entire restaurant scene proper. Many of these restaurants, unfortunately, were impacted by COVID-19, so I'm curious as to how many of these restaurants are going to be left after this year. The Michelin star restaurants make for a wonderful, memorable trip. They're worthwhile destinations. I encourage everyone to get out to them. Um, and I really thank you guys for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Um, and I look forward to hearing from and seeing your presentations as well. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for a fun semester.